4? Anybody know what that's called? Pythagorean theorem. Okay? Now, we're not actually going to be using it to find a side of a triangle, of a right triangle, but we're going to just solve for b. We're going to get b by itself. Okay? So, I'm going to rewrite it so I have some room to work with it. To get b by itself, what needs to be moved away from it first? Well, not yet. What moves away from it before the exponent? There's too much talking. The a squared. Since this is a positive a squared, how do you move it to the other side? Subtract it, right. Those now cancel out, and you have c squared minus a squared on the left side of the equal sign, and on the right side, you're only left with that b squared. Now to get b by itself, what has to go? The exponent. What is the inverse operation of squared? Square root. They cancel each other out, leaving b by itself. And if you square root that side, you have to square root that side. So you end up with b equals the square root of c squared minus a squared, which is b. Okay, so not that hard. All you had to do was 2 steps. Subtract the a squared, square root it all. Okay, now we're going to finish going over the review sheet. But before I start going over them with you, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to work 14 through 25 by yourself. Okay, so you need to get out the review sheet that we were working yesterday, and you're going to be working 14 through 25 by yourself. Okay, number 14. Factor the following. 169x squared minus 144. Is this a binomial or a trinomial? Binomials. So I look at my flow chart and I go to the side that says factoring binomials. The first question that it asks, is it a difference of 2 squares? It is. It's definitely a difference because they're subtracting, and each of these terms are perfect squares. So it shows on your flow chart to write them as 2 separate binomials, one with a plus sign, one with a minus sign, and then just square root. Like, what's the square root of 169? 13, because 13 times 13 is 169. And then to get an x squared, don't you have to put an x on each one of them? And then what's the square root of 144? Right, because 12 times 12 is 144, and then you're done. All right, number 15, binomial or trinomial? Trinomial, so you go to the side of your flow chart that says factoring trinomials. What is the first thing it asks you on that side? Right, is a equal to 1 or not equal to 1? It is. There's an understood 1 out front in the a place. So if a equals 1, it tells you to use the bubble method, which is where you look for 2 numbers, and those 2 numbers have to multiply to equal your c value, which is, and add to equal your b value, which is negative 5. And then it shows you on the flow chart that you write them in 2 binomials after you've thought of the numbers, which are what and what? Negative 2 and negative 3. And then you just put a y and a y to make the y squared, and then a negative 2 and a negative 3. And those are the 2 factors of this trinomial, because if you multiply those together by double distribution, wouldn't it take you right back to the question? All right, number 16, binomial or trinomial? Trinomial. So the very first thing it asks you on that side of the flow chart is what? Is a equal to 1, is it? Yes. So you go straight into the bubble method, which is where you look for 2 numbers. Those 2 numbers must multiply to equal 12 and add to equal negative 7. And then you write those in 2 binomials, and these are called factors. And what numbers will do that? A negative 3 and a negative 4. Okay, they use x's in this trinomial, so we'll put x times x to give us the x squared, and then negative 3 and negative 4. It does not matter. You could have put the x minus 4 first. All right, number 17. What are the factors of x squared plus 9x plus 20? Binomial or trinomial? Trinomial. What's the first thing they want to know? Does a equal 1? Yes. So you go straight into the bubble method, which means you look for the two numbers that multiply to equal your c value, which is, and add to equal your b value, which is 9. Out of the 25, 22 are multiple choice, 3 are free response. Okay, so now what numbers will do that? 5 times 4 is 20. 5 plus 4 is 9. So x plus 5 and x plus 4. Or you could have written x plus 4 then x plus 5. Order doesn't matter because think about it. These are touching, which means they're being multiplied. And when you multiply, does order matter? What property is that? Commutative. All right, number 18 is a bad problem. I should have told you before. Scratch out the choices. There's no right answer. Sorry. Okay. So we're just going to do it like it's a free response one. Is it a binomial or trinomial? Trinomial. What's the first thing they want to know on that side? Does it? What is the a value? 3. So once you know that your a value is a number other than 1, what do you check first? If it's the GCF. And what do I mean by that? Will it divide out of the rest of them? Okay, and it will. And since it will, that means it's the GCF, and you write it on the outside. You're like undistributing it, which is what factoring is. What trinomial remains? X squared correct? Now that we've factored out the 3, we have x squared minus 4x minus 5. Well, isn't that a trinomial with an a value of 1? So doesn't that mean we can factor it by just going straight into the bubble method where we multiply to get the c value? And then do you have a flowchart? Okay, what's the c value? And then you add to get the b value, which is negative 4. What numbers do that? Right? What kind of 1 and 5? Negative 5, so that they'll add to a negative 4. So an x and a positive 1 and an x minus 5. And so that's the right answer, which none of those were. Let me look at it a second. If I were to take the time to distribute the 3 to the x plus 1, it would make a 3x plus 3. So this one would work. But when the teacher created this that did, they just forgot to take out the GCF, and they did the other method, a times c. And that's how they ended up with that. Because do you see how, like, if I were to distribute this to that, it would make a 3x plus 3, which is right there, and then you would have x minus 5. But technically, we're supposed to do it this way because 3 is a GCF. All right, number 19, binomial or trinomial? Trinomial. What's the first thing you need to look at? Okay, does it? What is a? 2. Can you factor it out? No. So what do we have to do? It doesn't divide out because 9 divided by 2 would be a decimal. So we do that other method where you multiply the a times the c, which is 2 times 20 or 2 times 10, and you get 20. And then that's now the number that you're multiplying to get, but you're still adding to get your b, which is 9. Okay, what numbers do that? Okay. So an x plus 5 and an x plus 4. Please do not do not rush and just immediately circle D. That's not the right answer because think about it. If you were to distribute this out, x times x is not 2x squared, is it? So D is not right. We're not finished. And A is not right because A is showing that there's a GCF of 2, and we already said that won't work. So now what do we have to do? What does the flow chart tell you to do next? Divide both of these by the a, which is 2. Some of y'all need to pay attention. The test is tomorrow. And now, you try to reduce it, but if it won't, what do? To the front, and you get 2x plus 5. And then this one will reduce to an x plus 2, so it's choice B. Plus, look at C. If you did double distribute C, 2x times x would make the 2x squared, and 2 times 5 would make the 10. But when you do the outer terms, you get a 10x, and when you do the inner terms, you get a 2x. And 10x plus 2x is not 9x. When you do the outer and the inner for B, you get a 4x from the outer and a 5x from the inner, and those do add up to 9x. All right, number 20, trinomial or binomial? Trinomial, so what's the first thing you need to look for? Okay, what is the A value? 4. So since it's not equal to 1, we can't go straight into the bubble method yet. We have to do what? Okay, is it a GCF? Okay, so what do? Divide it. Okay, which means you pull it out front, and then you leave the trinomial that remains. What remains? Okay, now that you've done that, you've created yourself a trinomial that can be factored by the bubble method, and you look for two numbers that do what? Okay, and what is your C value? And what is your B value? 1. So what numbers do that? Now I'm asking for the numbers. 3 and 4. Okay? But to add them and get a positive one and to multiply and get a negative answer, one of them needs to be negative. Which one? The 3. So it's an A minus 3 and an A plus 4, which is B. Plus, once you started working this and you saw that 4 was the GCF, C is gone right away. And then also, I know by looking at A, and it has a negative and a negative times a negative would be a positive 48 once you distributed the 4 to it. So that's not going to work. All right, next page. Number 21, factor completely, okay? Binomial or trinomial? Trinomial, so what do you do first? Okay, what is the A value? Is it a GCF? Okay, so divide it out. If you're not sure when you look at it, you just try to divide it, and then you'll know. So put it on the outside. What trinomial remains? Right? And now you have yourself a trinomial that has an A value of 1, so you can go straight into the bubble method where you look for two numbers that multiply to equal negative 16 and add to equal, what numbers will do that? Negative 8 and positive 2, because you want them to add to a negative 6, so the bigger number needs to be the negative. So an x minus 8 and an x plus 2. All right, number 22. What is a common factor of x squared plus 7x plus 10 and x squared plus 9x plus 14? What do you think you need to do first? Work both of them out. Factor this trinomial. Well, isn't it an A value of 1? So we can go straight into the bubble method, and we look for two numbers that do what? Multiply to 10 and add to 7, which are positive 5 and positive 2. And now you do the bubble method of this one, because it's also a trinomial with an A value of 1, and what are its two factors? That will make a 9 when you add them. What other numbers multiply to 14? 7 and 2, an x plus 7 and an x plus 2. So which factor do both trinomials have in common? The x plus 2 factor. All right, number 23. Factor the following expression, x squared minus 10x plus 21. Okay, it's a trinomial. Does the A equal 1? Yes, so you're ready to go right into the bubble method, and we're looking for two numbers that multiply to equal 21 and add to equal -10. What numbers will do that? Okay, they will multiply to a +21 and they will add to a -10. So it's an x minus 7 and an x minus 3, or vice versa. Okay, number 24. Given the area of x squared plus 2x minus 15, find the missing side. Well, how do you find the area of a rectangle? Length times width. They've given you the length of x plus 5, but they have not given you the width. So you've got to figure out what would need to go there so that when you double distribute it, it would take you to this area. Now, last period, somebody was like, well, I have a hard time thinking of what should go there, so can I just factor this instead? And that's completely fine. If you were to factor this, you just do the bubble method. You look for two numbers that do what? Correct. Multiply to -15, add to 2. What numbers do that? Okay, but for them to multiply to be a negative, one needs to be negative. Well, look, they've kind of already told you this one is x plus 5, so this one has to be negative. So the missing side was this x minus 3. Okay, same thing with 25. You're trying to find the missing length, and they've given you the width of x plus 3, and you're trying to figure out what this binomial would need to be, pay attention, so that when you double distributed, you would get this area. Well, if you're not sure how to do it, but you know how to factor this, can't you just factor it? Okay, what is the A value? 2. Is it the GCF? No, so what do you need to do? Okay, and that gives you 6. And then you're adding to get 7. So two numbers that multiply to get 6 and add to get 7 are 6 and 1. Okay, so that would become x plus 6, x plus 1. But with this method, what do we have to do next? Divide by the A value, which is 2. And won't this one become an x plus 3, which we already have? And what will happen to this one? The 2 will go to the front, and so that's the missing length. A lot of you won't have to factor, though. You'll just see this and go, okay, well, what times x would be 2x squared? 2x. And what times 3 would be a 3? A 1. You would just fill in the missing pieces to make this work. Tomorrow, right after the warm-up, which will be a very quick one, I will take up your pink sheet and we will begin the test. There are 25 test questions.